Hey everyone, wanted to record an episode just by myself talking about our journey. When I say our, it's my wife and I'll get into that. Our first 6 months journey. So we started our first local newsletter, Leander Scoop, in early October, and it is now early March of 2025. So it seemed like a good time to kind of reflect on what we've done in the first 6 months, give some basic info of what we've gone through, what we've done, what went well, what went poorly, and some advice on anybody who is just now starting or wanting to start down this road of starting a local newsletter or local media brand. So here goes. Um, so we live in Liberty Hill, Texas, which is in the fastest growing part of the United States. So we border Georgetown, Texas, which is the number one fastest growing city in the US. And we also border Leander, which is the number three fastest growing city. So basically, the area of North Austin, Texas, is the fastest growing in the country. And so that was a coincidence. Did not know that when we moved here or didn't care about it. And then when the idea of the local newsletter came up, saw Ryan Snedden talking about it a couple years ago, thought about it, didn't move forward. But then, early last summer, started to think more and more about the concept and the fact that we were in the perfect area for this, in a really big suburban area that doesn't get covered well for the kinds of things that we do. And it being so fast growing that we'd have so much audience coming, so many new things happening. It just seemed like a no brainer. And so that's the quick background. Now, we started one newsletter. We started Leander Scoop, which covers Cedar Park and Liberty Hill, which is essentially the west side of the north suburbs. And then about 5 weeks in, we started another newsletter for the east side of the north suburbs called Georgetown Scoop. And we did that for about 4 to 5 weeks before we realized that the plan originally was to do all three major cities and areas in the North Austin area. And we realized quickly how much work that would be, that it just didn't make sense to do three. And so we combined Round Rock, which is actually the biggest city north of Austin, with Georgetown, and are doing two newsletters now. So this is something I'll get into toward the end about, was that a good decision or a bad decision? Really, three, I'll say right now, is a bad decision. So we're doing two now. The question is, should we have just done one? I'll get into that later because I'm not even sure right now. But so where we are today, so we started almost exactly 6 months ago. We have over 7,000 subs on Round Rock, and we have about 6,700 on Leander Scoop. So even though we started Leander first, Round Rock has grown a lot faster because our ad spend, it's just the cost has just consistently been less, even though it's the same exact ad. Everything's the same. I think it's probably just because Round Rock is a bigger city. That area has more population. Actually, I can't explain it other than that. So, but it's come in less. So that newsletter has come on extremely strong and kind of blown past Leander Scoop, because it had about before we put real effort into it, had about a 2 month delay. So in 4 months, it grew faster than Leander did in 6 months. I have had this entire time, I've had one full-time VA who's awesome. He kind of helps me with everything. He's kind of an all jack of all trades type of VA. We also have it's his sister actually, a part-time, his sister, who helps just 2 hours a day, helping like scraping events and whatnot. So we have a lot of help, and we're still and then of course my wife is my partner on this, and she does a lot of the writing and editing. I don't have done very little of that up until this point. So the reason that we did this, which is probably why you would watch this or why you're doing it, maybe this help explain what the concept is that we all know that how important it is to build an audience. I have tried to do it in crypto, which I did very slightly successfully in a hyper niche section of crypto. So it kind of worked, but it was, brand new thing. So new, it didn't work in the big picture. And then trying to do it in AI, I've been spending a lot of time in AI. Again, competition is so difficult in almost any space to build an audience. It is just extremely difficult thing to do. Yet we all know how valuable it is. Well, the thing that pushed me over the edge to do this was those experiences of knowing how hard it is, and yet seeing this concept of being a local, I hate the word influencer, but because that's not really what we are, but make it easy, say influencer, is actually super easy because your target is so small and almost nobody is doing it. And so I realized that this is a great way to build an audience and get so much value that people are getting by having an audience, but doing it in an easy way. Um, so hopefully that is why you're thinking about this, and it's true. I mean, again, all you have to do is basically pay for that audience. It's going to cost you on average 50 cents to $1 per person, and that's what it is. And it's really cool to know that you can do it that way. Another key point is I've recently, in the last 2 months, realized that it is not a good idea to think about this as a local newsletter business. It's a local media company. I've been saying this and harping on this a ton lately. I even saw Matt McGarry in his newsletter this morning talking about this, that newsletters are great. It can be the foundation of what you do, but if that's the only thing you're doing, it's going to be difficult to monetize and get it to where you want it to be in this space. Again, yes, there are newsletters like Morning Brew and B2B ones that can make a ton just from the newsletter, but that's because each reader there can be so valuable. Where in a local newsletter, each reader just is not nearly as valuable as a B2B newsletter. So what you need to do, or what I think you should do, what we're doing, is a local media company, which means number one, focusing on social media, Instagram primarily, but you could branch out to others too. Doing a local podcast, which I've started doing. I think I've recorded 4 so far, and excited to keep doing that. As Beehive builds out their new website platform to do a full news website is the plan. Again, I don't know how that's going to go, but that is the plan. And then some things that I'm not really doing or thinking a ton about right now, but others are, is physical products. You probably have heard of Mike Kaufman in the Catskills creating his own Monopoly board and making a ton of money with that. He also does really well with events. I know a few other guys are doing the event thing is more common, and people are making good money there. So whatever it is, you need to be out there more than just a newsletter. Um, and then the other thing that I'm thinking a lot about, I actually just started a partnership on another local newsletter outside of Texas. So to be clear, what I'm doing currently today. So we have our 2 main ones, which have around 7,000 each, so 14,000 total. Then I have another one in another suburban area of Austin that I haven't fully started yet, but I am running ads for and getting signups, which by the way is something you could do as well. You don't have to start writing it right away. I've actually had ads going for about 5 weeks, I think now, and haven't written anything. I need to get on that and at least tell them it's coming. But I've got about 600 subs for that one from Facebook. And then I also just partnered with a friend of mine who's super smart and great in another state in a suburb with 300,000 people, which to me is kind of perfect size. 200 to 500,000 people in a suburban-ish or smaller city area. I also am fascinated with the concept here of how to grow into more newsletters. I still don't know the best way to do it. I think the most successful path, although maybe the harder path, is what I'm doing now, which is partnering with somebody who has his own product to sell. So my friend is a mortgage broker. So that seems the most obvious path to success, but it also seems kind of the most difficult to work out. If he wasn't my friend, like how we would, settle who owns what and who's responsible for what would be kind of a pain. So the other models that I think about are the 6 a.m. city model, which is just start them yourself and pay for the ads and hire a writer and just own a bunch of newsletters, which I think they're doing pretty successfully. But there's a lot of upfront capital required there. And then the other idea, of course, is partnering with somebody locally or finding your own writer. I think the key that I'm thinking about for myself outside of partnerships is owning the local area and all of the suburbs of that area. So again, I'm in the Austin area. I don't care about the city of Austin, but it's going to be, the plan is hopefully to have the brand be successful and well known in all of the suburban areas of Austin. Okay, so my content. Let's go over what we've done content wise. So our newsletter is once a week. We're still doing once a week, although I'm working as hard as I can to hopefully soon get to a point where we're doing twice a week. But again, because we have 2 newsletters right now of our own, that's 4 newsletters a week. And again, this is relatively a lot of work. A lot of people are doing this by themselves. And yes, there's 4 of us, but we're kind of perfectionists, which also is not an advantage in this business model. I would urge you against having that. It's just difficult for our personalities to deal with that. But it does, no matter what, it takes a lot of effort, and it's one of those things you're on the treadmill, right? So something to be aware of. So we're doing once a week right now, and we're doing kind of what I would consider the more generic thing, which is probably not the best long-term strategy, but I think it's working really well right now. Again, AI hasn't taken over anything yet. So we cover, at the top, we cover news, then we cover restaurants, then we cover a local business. We throw in a fancy house just because people like to click on fancy houses. That's always one of the top clicks. And then we cover all the events at the bottom. So that's essentially what we're doing. We recently added a image at the top of the newsletter for the event of the week. I am not charging for this yet. Again, I'll get into the money in a second, but or sales in a second. But that is the plan, right? Is to say, okay, we put all 15 events at the bottom of the newsletter for free. But if you want to be at the very top of the newsletter and be the only one, that's going to be $100 or whatever you want. I think that's a smart plan. I think Mike is doing that. The style of my newsletter is, I think, pretty good. I'm sure some people can find faults with it, but I think it's one of the better looking ones out there. And the reason is we've just put a lot of effort into Canva. Again, it's not that difficult. It's more about knowing how to manipulate Canva and having a good eye for design. And I think ours is pretty good. It could be better. I'm sure a true designer would make something much better, but it's a little bit playful, a little bit sleek but playful. And I think that's kind of the tone we want to go for, because we're not journalists. We're not trying to, we're not hard news. We're not like corporate. We're just kind of the fun newsletter. And another piece that comes with that on my notes here too is we have a lot of GIFs, like fun GIFs in our newsletter, which we get a lot of compliments on. And I think that adds to the playful, entertaining value of reading the newsletter. So that's one thing I would encourage people to do, is figure out ways to incorporate the silly GIFs that people send to each other on their text messages, and you can put it in the newsletter. We also recently started introducing polls and surveys. So we didn't do a good job of the surveys at first because it's complicated. I was using a different landing page. I don't recommend. At this point, you should use the Beehive's landing page. But because we did that and our Facebook ads were so low in cost, we couldn't change it, because that would mean we had to start the Facebook ads over. So anyway, we recently started doing that, and that's really valuable information to see. So I would urge you to get started the right way, which is have a survey. The second after they hit subscribe, it takes them to a survey. So do that. And then the other thing we recently started doing is polls in the newsletter. Just find a reason to make a poll. What's your favorite restaurant, or what are you most excited about this week? I saw somebody say a good one, which is, have you ever gone to an event because you saw it in the newsletter? And then hopefully you get a lot of yeses at some point, and then you can take that to businesses to say, look at how engaged people are, right? Another one is, do you own a business? Or, whatever you want to come up with, because it creates engagement, right? So now people are clicking on things in your newsletter, plus you're getting information that you may want. So I think that's something that we just recently started that we're excited about. Another thing to think about on the content is, especially because we're doing once a week and all the stuff I just said we cover, you want to make sure you're not going over the size limit of the newsletter. And the other thing that we didn't realize until a couple months in is links actually take up a ton of space on the newsletter, which is really, bizarre when you think of it being like, oh, is it too long? It's not necessarily the length, it's the data, and links take up a lot of data. So be careful. And I would urge you, from what we've learned, you do not want to go over the limit. You can, but then your emails get cut off. And our first probably first month-ish, we were going over, just not thinking it was a big deal. And, we've just been told by a lot of people, and it just seems like it is a big deal. So figure out how to not get your newsletter cut off. Do whatever you can to not let that happen. Another thing we recently started doing is putting Instagram posts that we make inside of our newsletter. So yeah, you could just say in your newsletter, oh, go follow me on Instagram. Well, okay, why? Well, now we have a section of our newsletter that shows one of the things we posted on Instagram, right? A lot of times it's like, oh, the best barbecue restaurants in Leander. And then we make it a GIF too. So it scrolls through the pictures in the newsletter. So that's much more likely for somebody to click on that than just saying, hey, go to my Instagram. Okay, so let's get into some marketing ad stuff. So when we started, we were averaging about, I would say, 70 cents per subscriber for quite a bit. Probably the first 2 months, maybe even the first 3, we were averaging about 70 cents. And then with a change that Jazz from Winnipeg shared, it helped us cut that in half almost literally the next day, which was we were sending in this unique landing page that we made that had a bunch of information on it, right? My brain was going to, oh, let's create a landing page with, oh, here's what we're doing in Round Rock and Leander, and here's all the cool stuff. Well, when you send people to a page that has a lot to look at, they're going to look at a lot of things and then not take the action that you want them to take. So what we did is we moved it to the Beehive landing page that has nothing on it. It says Leander Scoop, here's a box for your email, and that's it. And so I would definitely recommend you do that. And so that cut our costs down. At one point for Round Rock, we were at about 18 cents for like a week, which was amazing. Now we're at about 35 to 40 cents in Round Rock and about 50 to 60 in Leander. Again, I'm not 100% sure why. There's a few small reasons, but yeah. So I would say we're averaging probably this whole time we've probably been averaging 40 cents or so. We did a little bit of the Facebook group thing to get organic subs at the very beginning. We posted in our HOA. We live in a very big HOA, so we got like 100 to 150 subscribers the first day or two from that. We posted in a couple groups a few times, got maybe another 100 in total. But then we post on Reddit, probably got a couple there, but you get some negativity in those groups, and we just didn't want to deal with it. So I would say that's probably something we should have done more on, or still probably could. But I've seen enough people in Mike's in the newsletter club saying that they have the same feedback, that there's just too much negativity there that it's just not really worth it. So that was our experience. If you want to go after it and deal with negativity, you probably should, because you can get stuff for free, but it's not as easy as it sounds. Sparkloop. I tried Sparkloop. It's a great concept. Go do some research to learn about Sparkloop if you're not sure what that is. But basically, I don't think it works for us. The value is just so small. Even though it's not a lot of work once you set it up, I just think that with how little money was coming in from it, it wasn't worth the turnoff risk of annoying people, giving them too many other newsletters. Just not a great experience for how little was coming in. B2B newsletters, I think this kind of thing can work really well. And if and when I start a B2B newsletter, I will use it. But local just did not have the experience that I was hoping for. All right, so here's the big question. Sales, ad revenue. We have 0, which is pretty frustrating because we have 14,000 subscribers, which is a lot in a very wealthy, relatively wealthy area. But essentially what's going on there is I haven't put much effort into this at all. So in a way, it's like kind of expected. You don't put any effort in, you're not going to get any out. In terms of inbound, we got a lot of, oddly enough, we got the most inbound at the very beginning, which is weird, but all the inbound was just people who can't actually afford it. Notaries, and I own the little pet store on the corner, and people who just are not ideal advertisers that even if we pursued it with them, they wouldn't have done it. Just recently, we've gotten a couple, 2 or 3 inbounds that seem like legit companies that would do it. I sent them emails, responses, and didn't hear back. Again, I need to call them and whatever. I just haven't gotten around to it. So something that I plan on prioritizing. I do not recommend you get to 14,000 without advertising. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just telling you the truth of where we're at. So it's something that I'm planning on truly focusing on if I can here soon, because we should be at least making some money. And again, the goal is whatever money we make from the ad revenue in the short term, put into ads to grow the newsletter. So that's what we're going to do. But also just be aware of how difficult it can be to get, the types of companies that you want as advertisers generally are bigger companies with bigger budgets. And what comes with that is harder to get a hold of the people who are in charge there, right? It's not hard to get in front of the person who owns the nail salon down the street, but they're also the ones that are going to, be the hardest to collect from, and they're going to want to pay you the least, and they're going to have all kinds of questions. And, so the better the client, the harder it is to get a hold of them. So be aware of that. How we do things in my newsletter, my wife writes the newsletter, like the actual content, and she does a lot of writing and editing. The editing primarily is of the events, where our assistant goes and does a lot of research for events, puts them in, formats them, puts the link, the time, that can sometimes cause issues because the timing, their computers in the Philippines say different times, and it can be difficult for them to get things right. Or, they pull an event from the day before the newsletter goes out. So she has to put a lot of work into editing that. And then she writes the newsletter. I do all the business and design and all that kind of stuff. Um, Another thing, we always put ads in the newsletter, and I recommend you do that, even if the ad is just for friends' businesses for free. So either makes, hopefully you have some friends, you can do a cool thing for them and run ads for them. You can just find a business and call them and say, hey, I'll run a free ad for you. Or you can run ads that say, hey, here's an ad slot. Do you want to get in front of blank number of people? Number one, you want to have ads for real businesses as much as you can to show other businesses that it's viable. So kind of creating that FOMO. And the other thing is you want readers to understand that there are going to be ads in the newsletter. You don't want to go, 4 or 5 months with no ads, and then you start having them in, and then it could feel, stranger to them than just, oh, this is how it normally looks. Okay, so some regrets or ideas, advice on, looking back on the first 6 months. I'm still very conflicted about the fact that we have 2 newsletters in a similar area. I think, if I had to guess, if all of a sudden I got in a time machine and went back 6 months, would I do just 1 for the area or 2? I would probably lean toward 1, even though the value prop would be a decent amount lower. Where I am, you can imagine in Texas, I mean, there are parts of Leander that would take longer to get to Round Rock than it would to downtown Austin. And so the whole value prop is, hey, these are things that are 15, everything in this newsletter is likely 15 minutes from my house. And so doing essentially the whole county of Williamson County is so big, it's almost the opposite of the point of the newsletter. But so that's the downside. But the upside is 1 newsletter, only 1, we're doubling the workload by having 2. And we're splitting the numbers. So when I said, at this point, I'm saying, we have 14,000, but the reality is we only have 7 on Leander. We only have 7 on Round Rock. So if we had just a Williamson County newsletter, it would be 14,000. I'd only have to do 1 ad system, all these kinds of benefits. So something to think about if you're concerned about doing 1 or 2. My instinct is to say you should probably do 1 depending on the area. But again, the value prop is lower when you do it that way. So it's a trade-off, but man, the extra work really sucks. So I'd probably lean toward 1. I probably wish that we did more trying to get organic subs on Reddit and social media. I think just some of the negative backlash just affected my wife a little more than we expected and didn't want to push it because of that. Hopefully those of you doing this kind of recognize more that you're going to get negativity from this, because that's human beings on the internet. There's a lot of people who are just negative and they want to find things to hate. So you got to deal with that. Unfortunately, we kind of just decided not to, but I would say it's probably smart to do that. So that would be my recommendation to watching this, is at least try a little bit more. The other thing that we're still hopefully going to start doing very soon, but again, coming back to the workload problem, is doing at least 2 newsletters a week. I think 3 is probably where we'll end up, but 2 allows you, number one, you don't run into the going over issue, because hopefully you're just splitting that. In our case, it would be like essentially splitting the newsletter into 2. So you wouldn't have any issue there. You could put more events in, because instead of say 15 in one newsletter, you could have 10 and 10, and it would still be less space. The other obvious one is having more ad space, although that's not an issue for us since we're not doing any paid ads right now, but obviously hopefully we will be soon, and that will be a value. But the other thing that I think people don't think about enough, which is why I'm excited to do it soon no matter what, is the value to the brand and brand awareness. We're only sending a newsletter once a week. Yeah, people probably get it. We have a 60% open rate, so people are actually reading it and liking it, but they're probably scrolling through it pretty quick and, oh, this is cool, and then that's it. And they only see it once a week. It's not great for brand awareness if it's there. That's too rare of something they're seeing. You want to be building habits, getting them accustomed to how valuable this brand is, talking to their friends about it, sharing it. And so I think the more you do, the better it is. Now, of course, there potentially can be a line to that. Is doing 5 days a week too much? Are you going to annoy people and get them to unsubscribe? The answer is probably yes, but it's still worth it. So at that point, the question is more about the workload and do you have enough content for 5 days a week? That's why I think for most people, the answer is probably somewhere in the middle, 2, 3, maybe 4 days a week, 3 probably being ideal. And so that's where we want to get to. The other key piece that we actually ourselves need to do a little bit better of a job, and I think this comes back to the twice a week issue that we need to do, which is we don't have enough space to add a lot of our personality into the newsletter. So we do a pretty good job. Again, we do funny GIFs. We have an editorial at the beginning that we try to add a little personality into. Maybe we share a picture of our kids sometimes or our family, giving the newsletter more personality than when you think about AI, right? This is the big question. How much is AI going to impact this business model? And probably a decent amount. I don't think it's going to make it go away, but it is going to have an impact. And so the solution there is building something that people can truly connect to, because you're a person, you're a human, you have a tone, you have a style, you have a voice. Where if it's just general sharing of events and sharing of news, that's going to get harder to keep your moat if that's all you're doing. So we're doing an okay job at this, not great, but that is the goal, is to get into more custom content, custom pieces, custom everything, so that AI cannot impact that and build more connection to the brand. And then another thing I'm thinking a lot about that I'm struggling with, if anyone has ideas, please let me know. But because SparkLoop didn't work, that stinks. But is there a way to get to a negative CAC model where acquiring customers, you actually get paid to acquire customers or acquire customers for free? And so the way to do that, again, SparkLoop ideally would be that, where say it costs you 50 cents per subscriber, yet you're making 60 cents per subscriber on SparkLoop. Well, now you just made 10 cents collecting subscribers. Well, if that was the case, you'd probably double, triple, quadruple down on ads, right? You should. So because we can't do that, another way I think about the possibility here is having an ad in the welcome email that could do the same thing, right? So now this is much, much harder, because why I'm struggling is what kind of product or service could be advertised that could get enough people to buy it or sign up for it, but also wouldn't be obnoxious or like obvious, right? It can't just be like, oh, your insurance agent, this insurance agent will give you a free quote. Like, nobody's going to click on that, and you're just going to probably annoy people with that. But is there some sort of unique service in your area or a unique product that wouldn't be a detractor from your welcome email or annoy people, but would still get enough people interested to click on it? And then you could make money on that. And if you're making 60 cents, per subscriber, then now you are making money or breaking even on your acquisition, and you can double, triple, quadruple down. So I think this could be a really cool idea. I've seen a few people talking about this. I know one of the guys in the group is doing this he just started with a local ISP, like internet service, because I think he's in a rural area where that's like something people would have a choice in that way. I don't know. But that seemed like an interesting idea, but also not super exciting. So is there something more fun or more unique that you could do? Maybe even like a holiday version of this would be Christmas light installation. Now that's obviously a short-term thing, but think of that. Is there a year-round version of that where it's kind of like, yeah, I actually want to do that. I've been thinking about it and I didn't know who to call. Okay, great. And then they click on it and you make $100, and yeah, 99 out of 100 people aren't going to click on it. But if one did and signed up, you just made $1, the equivalent of $1 per sub, right? So anyway, if you have ideas for that, I'd love to hear them. So that's basically all I had in terms of kind of an overview of my first 6 months doing this. Again, it's been super fun, really enjoying, researching the community, putting ourselves out there, getting almost exclusively good feedback. Again, other than we did get one completely crazy person send us literally psychotic email, which was very bizarre, but didn't even have to do with us. But overall, the feedback has been great. And this is what I hear in the newsletter club. Everybody's getting good feedback. This is a great model. There's a lot of really great things here. Again, monetization is the hardest part, but overall, we've been really happy and we're excited. We're at 14,000 in 6 months. Hopefully, we're going to get to 20 by summer. And once we're there, we kind of become more of a known brand in the area and all the places that we can take this in the future. I'm really excited. So, if you want to talk, again, I'm just kind of getting started on this journey of this channel and putting myself out there in this way. I'd be more than happy to chat with you, at least for a little while, for anybody for free, kind of help where I can. I do plan on kind of doing some consulting or really something. I'm not really sure, but so right now I'm happy to do it for free and help some people. If you'll help me, give me some advice on how I do and suggestions so that I can make money, doing consulting in the future. And then also I'm working right now on doing a newsletter, of course, or kind of creating content outside of just the channel for this brand. Of course, newsletter will be one, and then maybe even have a full website. Literally everything we're talking about in the local newsletter, doing that in for this brand, for all of you business owners in the space, to share the information that I'm learning and what we're going through, and send that to your inbox, of course. So keep an eye out for that. Haven't started it yet, but hopefully going to do that here soon. So appreciate you listening. Let me know if you have any feedback or want to chat. Let me know. I'm happy to hear it and happy to connect. All right. Thanks.